Welcome back, Dram fans. Today I'm opening another dusty bottle from my shelves. This is the Port Charlotte, but it's the old non-age statement expression that came before the current 10-year-old, which points out the curious little fact that Port Charlotte has gone in the opposite direction to Bruichladdich. So Port Charlotte went from a no-age statement whisky to a 10-year-old age statement, whereas Bruichladdich, the unpeated stuff, went from an age statement to a non-age statement, which is really odd if you consider that a lot of people would agree, I think, that malt-driven whiskies, so unpeated stuff, generally improves with age if it's got enough flavour to start with, whereas peated whisky is quite often better at a younger age where it presents more peat. So what they've done here is a little bit counterintuitive, but here we are. I'm going to give you a little bit of a close-up of the tube on this one, because not only will some people be interested, but there's going to be a lot of malt enthusiasts out there who have never had the chance to buy this because it's been unavailable for going up for 10 years. And a lot of people might never have even seen it. You malt newbies out there. What does that say on the edge there? Non-chill filtered, colouring free product of Scotland. Lots of information. And I quite like these tubes. I think that they're very striking. And my advice to you would be, if you're like me and you've got some of these dusty old retro tubes on your shelf, keep them. Because these metal tins, as much as they are wasteful and bad for the environment, and they just end up in landfill, you're not going to get them ever again. Bruichladdich are committed to their environmental mission, which is good, but these old tins, you're probably never going to see a Bruichladdich in this ever again, and tins in general are really falling out of favour when it comes to Scotch whisky presentations. So if you've got these, keep them, use them to store your stamps or coffee beans, or what do you have? They're a nice thing to have around. They're a bastard to open and break many a fingernail, but they're a nice little collector's memorabilia from a bygone age of whisky appreciation. So this is the actual bottle that we get inside. And I really like these as well. It's kind of a little bit Ben Romack, isn't it? That it's painted onto clear glass. I really like the presentation of the new Port Charlotte in the dark glass medicine bottle as well. But I think that this one's equally striking. And the eagle-eyed of you out there will have seen that there's a bottling code on the glass. And this one here says, should have looked at this before, 210514, so that's 21st of May 2014. Which is very special to me personally, because I was on the Isle of Islay at Bruichladdich Distillery and all of the others in July, late June, early July 2014. So they actually bottled this one when I was packing my stuff on the way. I also don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's a fair amount of detritus on the bottom inside the bottle there, which is just the evidence of a natural presentation. Haze and cloudiness is flavour, and flavour is what we want. So yeah, this stuff here, you can probably get it on auction sites occasionally. I'd imagine it's probably not very expensive. You won't get it from online retailers, you definitely won't get it from Bruichladdich. It's been discontinued for quite a few years, but I used to buy this one a lot. And I really, really liked it. And I went off Port Charlotte a little when they brought out the new 10-year-old, because I really liked this one. And at least to start with, I've changed my mind a little now. I didn't like the direction that they were taking it. So let's see. Let's have a little comparison here, because I've reviewed the Port Charlotte 10-year-old recently. Let's see if this is good as I remember, and let's see if there's much of a difference. Cork stopper. Pleased to see that it hasn't failed on me in the 10 years that I've been storing this stuff. I do think that it is a noticeably paler colour. We know that this is non-chill filtered natural colour. We think that this stuff is non-chill filtered natural colour, although they don't see it as important enough to tell us on the label. I'm not getting into that. Life's too short to be angry every day. With the old one though, apart from having the guarantee of non-chill filtration and natural colour on the tin, we know that this stuff is Scottish barley and it's peated to 40 ppm. It's bottled at an ABV of 50%, which is interesting considering that the old Laddie 10 that was available at the same time as this was only bottled at 46%. So this stuff, which I think did come out a little bit later, obviously came out slightly after they'd moved from 46 to 50. This stuff is diluted with Isla spring water from Octomore Field, and it's also said to be around 5 years old. They don't have an age statement on the bottle of this stuff, but that was what I was told by Bruichladdich at about the time that I bought this. And bearing in mind that the bottle code on mine says that it's bottled in 2014, we're looking at a distillation date of around 2009. And a big thing on this one, there's no mention of wine casks. So, got some in the glass, let's see what it's like. And this is just my opinion, but I don't think that they have used wine casks in this one. I think that this is much more of a bourbon matured maturation. The first thing that leaps out of the glass on this one is not wine or spicy oak, it's just pure peated grist. Bright and sweet lemony malt notes that you just don't get in the new 10-year-old because they're covered up by those wine casks and that European oak. Very peaty, straightforward peat bomb, very medicinal, germaline, bandages, TCP, rather than the wine-driven cough syrup notes that you get in the modern PC10. Also quite coastal and maritime. A definite salty maritime side, as well as some perfumed polish oak, but definitely, I don't know what the cask breakdown is on this one, but it seems to me like it's more of an American oak bourbon cask maturation. A little bit of dry oakiness, but definitely not the spicy, intense, bitter oakiness and the winey notes that you get on the modern PC10. Let's see how it tastes. Quite oaky, but definitely more of a traditional to our modern minds, kind of a bourbon maturation, heavily peated, bourbonised whiskey. Definitely more along the lines of what you'd expect from Lafroig and Kalila, rather than the distinct wine and sherry driven style that you get from the modern PC10. Lots of bourbon cask influence, as well as a more direct oakiness, perhaps more barrel char coming through, possibly even some virgin oak or just some extra active oak on this one. Maybe some recharred bourbon casks, but definitely a curious sweet ashiness on this one. Quite burnt, but that peatiness, I don't think that it covers up the maltiness and the actual spirit as much on this one as it does on the modern 10-year-old. Getting lots of sweet maltiness on the palate of this one, sweet green apples, and lots of cereal notes, like a sweet milky porridge The peat is without a doubt there on this one. Lots of burnt peatiness, but also lots of sweetness from the malt and the bourbon cask. Also getting a little bit of a note of pine from the peatiness on this one, and quite salty and a little bit of a spearmint note. So all in all, as I said, I think that this one is more of a straightforward Islay peat bomb than the modern Port Charlotte 10, which really breaks the mould and goes off in a very different direction. I think that if you were tasting this one blind, I think that you would be more likely to confuse this with a Laphroaig or a Caol Ila than Bruichladdich, where it's actually from. Let's have one more sip and look at the finish. Lots and lots of ashy peat and medicinal smoky grist, all wrapped up in that beautiful bourbon sweetness. So this really brings back memories. I really like this one, and I can see why I bought so many bottles of this back when it was available. And I'll admit that there's a little bit of guesswork and detective work on my part. I don't know what the cask breakdown is going into this one. I don't know that it is 100% bourbon, but I suspect that it is. I think that the new version is a little bit less peaty from the extra age, and also, importantly, from the wine cask maturation that goes into that. And I think that those wine and sherry casks on the modern 10-year-old are bordering on a little bit much for me, because I am quite traditional when it comes to my peated whiskey. I think that this old one is more textbook Islay. It's certainly more along the lines of like an I.B. Williamson or a Caol Ila. And as good as this stuff is, this is very much a happy place for me, which really presents a dilemma for me. I stopped buying Port Charlotte for quite a while because I didn't like that they'd messed around with my dram so much. And I still think that it's a very bold move to take something which is as good as this, because it's as good as any kind of youngish, heavily peated Islay malt out there. It's a very bold move to take something that is this good and change it as drastically as this. But that is a very Bruichladdich thing to do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but they change, they challenge, and they innovate. So going back to this stuff is a wonderful little time capsule, a wonderful little trip down memory lane for me. And I really, really enjoyed this a lot 10 years ago, and I still do. But these days I taste this, and I instantly think of half a dozen other distilleries that can give me a very similar experience. Some of them possibly even slightly better, and a lot of them still available. Whereas that 10-year-old that I disliked so much when it came out offers something unique and different, and I actually find myself kind of preferring this one a bit. I think that out of these two, they're really very, very different whiskies. So I think that you're really comparing styles rather than quality when you pit these two against each other. But, and this is a difficult moment for me, I kind of think, bearing in mind what you can get from elsewhere, this 10-year-old is kind of the more interesting dram out of these two. It's certainly the one that you won't be able to get from any other distillery. I think that this one, you can get it from a lot of other places, whereas this one is really unique and innovative and different. And I'm actually glad that this is the one that we can still get today. As for this one, it is a wonderful little trip down memory lane for me. But once this bottle's gone, perhaps it's time to call last orders and say goodbye to this old friend. Let me know what you think, if you remember this or if you've still got any of this, and what you think of it compared to the new stuff. I think they're both great, really. They're very different, but they're both great, and I am going to end my boycott of Port Charlotte. As much as I like this one, and I really resent that we can't get it anymore, this stuff is fantastic. And I don't know if you can see how much of that I've got through. Just over half. I will be replacing this stuff, because it is very good. Let me know what you think, and let me know of anything, any examples that you can think of where the whiskey has been changed or replaced and you've eventually come to warm to it. Until then, thanks for watching and cheers.